Cases in the U.S. more than doubling in the last 2 weeks.
There's so much distrust with the government right now.
Right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Seems like they've lost the majority of the control of these steps.
A recent survey by a U.S. fact tank showed rising disillusionment with the state of U.S. democracy. 72% of Americans and 57% of interviewees worldwide viewed it as a poor example of a political system. The United States has long branded itself as a beacon of democracy. However, just days before President Joe Biden hosts the so-called Summit for Democracy, the U.S. was added to an annual list of backsliding democracies. The right to vote is billed as the most enshrined right in the U.S. Constitution. However, U.S. elections are believed to expose fundamental flaws in American democracy.
They've got an electoral college which decides who becomes president or not. Hillary Clinton had won the popular vote, but the electoral college came in and made sure that Donald Trump wins. What type of democracy is that? The U.S. democracy doesn't even work in its own country.
You know, we had elections in, look at the state of Virginia where I am, and it was a very contested election. Only 53% of the population came out to vote. So that means 46% of the population really don't feel that they have any say in what's going on. So what's the purpose of this democracy?
And most recently, more restrictions have been imposed on citizens' voting rights.
Они деформировали эту выборную демократию настолько, что люди перестали верить в ее справедливость, перестали верить в ее честность.
In January this year, the deadly Capitol riots further exposed the troubled state of its democracy, though the country kept preaching the values of U.S.-style democracy abroad.
People are really just totally divided, so that the system of so-called American democracy is in a very, very serious crisis at the moment.
Estados Unidos históricamente ha tenido un discurso doble, una doble moral, un doble rasero para hablar de democracia.
The Greek-derived term, democracy, means rule by the people. However, America's politics today is described as a money game for the rich.
The problem with the American system is the money. There's just too much money involved. I found that the American election last year cost $40 billion. And I think it's really money wasted.
This article by the Scholars Strategy Network unveils money's role in a U.S. presidential election. Analysts say, American democracy has already been kidnapped by business elites and organized interests.
Democracy should be about having a voice and having that voice heard. If you can't get your voice heard because you don't have enough money to keep up, then that's a huge problem. That's not democracy.
According to Bloomberg, the wealth of America's super rich is now higher than what the U.S. middle class earns as a whole.
It takes such a tremendous amount of money to run an election and to win an election. Everybody is catering to the moneyed interests who have their own interests in policy. And so the idea of, independent candidates is almost out of the question at the present moment because of the way the system is developed.
A government for the people. This notion is often quoted to describe the American democracy. However, the country's two major political parties remain split on almost every issue of public interest, ranging from gun control, healthcare, to pandemic response, making governance increasingly ineffective. As politicians bicker and fight, it is the ordinary Americans who bear the consequences.
In America, you can be inefficient, but if you can become a president of the United States just by being popular and not by being efficient, there's something wrong with that system.
If you look at the trust level in the model of democracy which US and certain Western countries are preaching, my answer is that the trust of the people on that model is declining because it is not actually delivering the opportunities which people had thought of, and it is not delivering the economic equilibrium.
In the United States, the reason you have this skepticism about vaccination or skepticism about continual testing is that they feel that this is a government which is not working in their interest, which is trying to control them, and which is out to get them. And therefore you have almost half the population who feel totally alienated from the government itself.
In the eyes of many observers, the beacon of democracy is losing its luster.
The crisis in American democracy is the lack of credibility of political systems. Political stability of the United States today is not a paradigm, it's not a model.
Something is very wrong with their system. So yeah, I don't think it's under threat. I think it's already in the dying throes, or if not, already dead.